by way of Curacao makes his way to the stage. He's had a fairly quiet year after a busy one a year ago where he competed 8 times, and Rulli, of course, showcases some of those historically spectacular arms, and he's really done a great job of becoming a real big star here in Las Vegas, Sean, each year come Olympia time.
Well, Dan, like I said from a day ago, 24 hours later, we could be looking at a totally different bodybuilder, which at first blush, that's exactly what I see. I see a Roller Winkler that's a little bit closer to where he should have been yesterday, so he did definitely make up ground. The arms actually look like they grew, but in that comment, you actually see the separation in the hamstrings and the calves that were kind of missing a little bit yesterday. And you got to wonder, Dan, whether or not it's enough to make up for the slow start a day ago.
Well, there's a lot of spots in that top 6 that are, up for grabs, and I know Rulli wants to grab one of those. He's never managed to finish in the top 6. He's been 7th here. In fact, before the show, we caught up with Jay Cutler, and if you recall, there was that one year where Rulli finished 7th, Jay finished 6th. It was Jay Cutler's final competition. Jay Cutler just admitted to me a few minutes ago that he actually would have put Rulli ahead of him, and he thought that he probably unfairly got the nod.
Well, and Jay was mad at me because I said the exact same thing, but I said it in the heat of the moment, and now hindsight is 2020. Rulli had a shot, but that we're talking a long time ago. Rulli's been at it ever since then, trying to get back in there and make a name for himself. He's probably right where he was then. He's fighting to be relevant in that 6th, 7th spot. And the hamstrings are coming in, the glutes are coming in, the calves are coming in. But you got to wonder, again, it's a lot of ground to make up.
One of the real challenges for a guy like Rulli Winkler is we are now in an era where the top guys are named Phil Heath and Dexter Jackson and Sean Roden. They are of the more aesthetic variety. And when a guy like Rulli Winkler shows up, now granted, Big Ramy, we're going to talk about him later, he's managed to pull it off, but he's got a better flow, a different type of structure. With Rulli, it's really hard for him to compare with guys like Heath and the other more aesthetically guys.
He's not a genetic freak. He's got body parts, and when thrown together, you can see there's a little bit of blockiness in the way the thighs are shaped. He's got those massive arms that overpower the majority of his physique. It doesn't flow on an aesthetic basis, but Rulli by himself is a freak, and when he picks the right show, he wins. That's how he got here.
Well, we're going to get our first look
from the United Kingdom. Please welcome Nathan D'Asha.
Okay, so what they're doing now, just to be clear, we are watching only the top 10 finalists perform their routines. I guess in the sake of time, they have to limit it. So we're not going to get a chance to see. I was expecting we were going to get to see Johnny Jackson compete for the final time, but Johnny Jackson will not get the pose. We'll see him in a few minutes. But Nathan D'Asha, one of the rising stars in the world of professional bodybuilding, competing in the Olympia for the 2nd time. He was 12th here a year ago, a former British champion, and Sean Ray, a lot of people really like what they're seeing from Nathan D'Asha.
Yeah, he's got a lot of potential, and it's a diamond in the rough. The lats are a little bit high, the waist is a little bit long. Again, this is his 2nd Olympia, so there's a lot of things that he's going to have to learn along the way, and we're going to see those weaknesses here on the biggest stage. But again, he's a guy that when he picks the right show, he winds up in that victory circle. And right now, this is a contest where I talked to him after prejudging yesterday that he is just ecstatic because no matter what happens here, he's done better than he did a year ago.
When you look at his ability, though, to get into shape, and you look at it, when you consider his age, he's still relatively young. And the way he's put together, this is a guy, if he can fill out that frame, put on some, he's got a lot of room to grow there. And you can see why people are really excited about what he can be in the coming years.
Which is the amazing part of bodybuilding, because it's always these ifs and when. There's so many other external factors getting ready for a show this big that take place throughout the year. I mean, life takes place. You got kids, you got jobs, you got sicknesses, you've got travel, and all these things, and then you turn around and you got to put it on display and hope that it's better than a year ago. And right now, Nathan D'Asha has everything to be proud of in terms of coming back here and representing improvement from year to year.
He's got no shortage of biceps. He's got plenty of shoulders, and he's got a nice thick quad sweep. And really, this is a guy who I think come 2018 is going to collect a whole bunch of titles on the circuit. Maybe not ready yet to contend for shows like the Arnold Classic or the Olympia, but it's not that far down the road for him.
Let's be honest.
Look mature in a way that isn't always a positive thing. Dexter comes out, and while we might criticize that his conditioning isn't quite where it has been before. There's nothing about this physique that looks even remotely old.
No.
And that's the extraordinary part about this. And as he hits that classic Dexter Jackson front double bicep, these fans, they can appreciate what they're watching. They are watching one of the greatest bodybuilders to ever live.
And typically, Dan, we see bodybuilders age on stage, and we can't really even talk about age. Dexter is Dexter. There's very few people like him. And forget bodybuilding, in any sport, there's nobody like Dexter Jackson doing what he does. In boxing, the guys slow down, the reflexes kind of diminish, and they take more punches. Dexter is right there in the mix with these guys. If we didn't know how old they were, Dexter Jackson's still a top 6 guy. Strong too. Yeah. Lifting the kind of weights that Dexter lifts for a 48-year-old guy, it's very impressive.
There he is, one of the greatest.
Dexter Jackson.
One of the greatest of all time, and you can be sure that these fans appreciate and understand what they just witnessed in the nearly 48-year-old former Mr. Olympia.
Your final competitor is your 6-time reigning and defending Olympia champion, The Gift, Phil Heath.
All right, Dan Solomon along with Sean Ray, and we are watching the #1 bodybuilder on the planet. Phil Heath, a 6-time Mr. Olympia champion, makes his way to the stage for the first time tonight. He debuted all the way back in 2006, and since then he has gone on to have an extraordinary career. Tonight he looks for Olympia win #7, and Sean Ray, if he is able to do that, we will have to say, move over, Arnold Schwarzenegger. You've got company.
Absolutely. This is the guy that's won over in India. He's won the Arnold Classic over in Europe, and he's won here 6 times. And this is what he does. He wins, wins, and wins.
Dimension, that 3-dimension, that thickness, that separation, those remarkable lines that have made him the best bodybuilder in the world. They are back here tonight in 2017. A lot of folks were wondering coming in, which version of Phil would we see? There's been times where he's trying to play the size game to some extent. Then there's been times where he's gone all in on conditioning. He and his trainer, Hani Rambod, they're very smart. They're very good at what they do. They take a very intelligent approach. So I'm going to ask you, Sean Ray, how do you feel about this year's strategy in 2017?
Well, it's clearly working. I mean, this Phil is in the hunt. I mean, this is Phil's show, right? I mean, last night we were talking, he's got to have better control of the midsection. After that, there was nothing else really to talk about in terms of weaknesses. Look at his delts. Look at his arms. His back is ridiculous. I mean, there's not a lot to criticize when you have a genetic freak, a former basketball player. The hamstrings are just hanging off the back of his thighs. His calves are right there with the best of them. I don't know where you pick apart Phil Heath. You may talk about not having control over his stomach throughout his routine, but when you turn around to the rear, we're talking half the body. Look at the hamstrings, the glutes, the crevasses through the traps, and the deltoids. When he stands next to Big Ramy, Ramy's going to have an answer for that. And if he doesn't, Phil's walking off with #7.
Sean Ray, let's make no mistake about it. Coming off prejudging, there were some questions. And he comes into this knowing that he still has some work to do. Because there are people out there might even be people on that judging panel who are questioning whether or not Phil has done enough to take out Big Ramy and the other competitors.
Well, by himself, he's done plenty. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this is Mr. Olympia we're looking at right now. Until he stands next to Ramy for the second round of comparisons, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where all the questions will be answered. Because right now, Dan, I'm looking at a 2-man show. William Bonac, as good as he is, I'm not sure he's big enough to take on the beast from the East. But Phil is looking like Mr. Olympia. The question is, how will he look standing next to Ramy 24 hours from yesterday?
Well, there he is, Phil the Gift Heath. He comes to us from Colorado, and he's looking for #7.
Just a little bit, but Johnny's physique is still one of those physiques that he looks like he put in a lot of time.
And this will be the final routine that we will see here in the Mr. Olympia portion of the event. Typically it would end with the defending champion Phil Heath. They had brought Johnny Jackson out. He is not a top 10 finisher, to give him one final chance to perform for his bodybuilding fans on his final night as a Mr. Olympia competitor. As a programming note, we still have the Bikini Olympia to be staged in a few moments. We also have the under 212 Olympia Championship coming up as James Flex Lewis looks to win the title once again. But now we're just going to enjoy the final moments of Johnny Jackson's Olympia career.
Dan, as a side note, I want to give a special shout out to Johnny Jackson, husband and a father, contest promoter, lifelong career bodybuilder, one of the better men in our sport, not just as an athlete, but a quality person as well. Gives seminars, and if you've ever seen him train, if you haven't, find him on YouTube. Dan was right, this is one of the world's strongest bodybuilders, right there with Ronnie Coleman, who has 8 Mr. Olympia titles. Johnny Jackson has strongman titles, so there's very few bodybuilders that actually have strongman titles and bodybuilding titles and serve their country and raise children. Congratulations to Johnny as he bids adieu here in Las Vegas.
Give it up for one of the greatest of all.
William and Phil.
And that was predictable from last night's call-outs, Dan. I mean, all these guys equally, I think, improved. I didn't see anybody go the other direction. Sometimes they can fill up and fill out too much and lose ground. It seems like everybody equally got better as they were doing their comparisons yesterday.
And this is one of the more coveted moments in the sport, the chance to be a part of that Olympia first call-out. As you mentioned, William Bonac, Dexter Jackson, Sean Roden, Rully Winkler join the defending champion.
Dexter and William, switch please.
Phil Heath.
Dexter and William.
Along with Big Ramy, of course.
I believe in this
Ramy
comparison,
and William, switch.
they'll move Rolly out from the center, I think, and move Ramy closer to Phil. I imagine they'll probably stand next to each other in a minute.
And Rolly, switch.
And there it is, Dan.
And the crowd understands what they're watching. Everybody in the bodybuilding universe wants to see Mamadou Alsbaye, Big Ramy stand next to Phil, the Gift Heath, and see these guys go toe-to-toe and pose for pose.
Gentlemen, quarter turn to the right.
You're looking at 2 men on stage who have won the Mr. Olympia, Dexter Jackson, a former champion, Phil Heath, the reigning champion, and then there's Big Ramy, a guy who's trying to become champion.
Yeah, I mean, he's thick as a brick. I mean, again, this takes me back to when I competed with Dorian Yates. It's that apple and orange comparison. But I can tell you, Dexter does not look 10 years older than Phil Heath in this comparisons.
Now, what can't be lost in any of this is that Sean Roden, the guy who was runner-up here a year ago, is trying to make his kind of climb up and form a bit of a comeback in the show. But
he's a little passive, Dan. He always has been. He's going to have to show some aggression and let him know he's here to fight for this and try to get inside there and move Dexter on that outside. Phil's got to be careful here with his stomach. That's where he had a problem last night.
Well, here it is. This is where the Big Ramy fans will sit there and point out. I'd love it if the camera could pan back over and we can get a clear sense of that Big Ramy versus Phil Heath comparison.